I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our newly admitted Tritons for the winter 23 term. My name is Pauline de Guzman, and I'm the Assistant Director of Student Services here at the International Students and Programs Office. On behalf of ISPO, I'd like to welcome you all to UC San Diego. We do have a brief agenda today, but before we begin, I would like to just remind you all of some housekeeping, and we'll go back. Oops. Apologize there. Uh-oh. Some technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. So before we begin, you are on listen only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Also, we are recording, so you can view this webinar later at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. And feel free to use the ask a question or Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar, and we can make sure that we address any questions during and also after the session. We will cover a lot of information today, so please do feel free to ask questions clarifying the information we cover. I'll give you a brief introduction to who we are at ISPO, and who our team members might be, and who you might meet during your time here. Also, we'll review your immigration documents and some rules and regulations you will need to understand during your time at UC San Diego. Many of you will travel at some point, so we'll also go over what to do in cases of international and domestic travel and emergencies. And we'll also review some ways to connect with other Tritons and EAP students this coming winter term. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. So here at ISPO, the International Students and Programs Office, we do have a team of 20 advisors, administrative support staff, and also student assistants. We do have two areas in which we support our international students. Number one, most obvious and most students know us for, is our advising. We advise on immigration status, also on working as an international student on and off campus, if students are interested in doing that, traveling and re-entering, and also as you move forward with your academic programs, how those changes in your academic programs might impact your visa status and also campus life. We also do host a number of programs or events. These events and programs help you to adjust to studying and living in the US, also understanding maybe some of your immigration documents and benefits, campus resources available to you, and knowing how to stay engaged in prioritizing your health and your safety while at UC San Diego. So we'll go over some ways to connect today as well, in addition to the rules and regulations you will need to know during your time here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the document self-check at this time. If you have it available, please do pull out your passport, your visa page, which should be inside of your passport, your Form I-20, and also, if you're already in the US, your Form I-94. So go ahead and pull those out, and we'll review them together today just to make sure they're up to date. Okay. All right. So some things to note before we jump into your documents is, number one, never throw away or never discard any immigration documents that you receive, either from our office or from a government source. It's important that you keep all copies of your Form I-20 that ISPO issues you. And also, if you are joining us from transferring perhaps from a different institution in the US, also any Form I-20s or immigration documents you might have received during your time at a different institution. As you move forward and perhaps apply for different immigration benefits while you're in the US, you may need to recall some of those documents from the past. So please do keep all of your documents. You never know when you might need them. Another note is you need to know how to keep each document updated and valid at all times. We will review that today so that you're familiar with each document, but make sure you understand it is your responsibility to keep your documents up to date. The third point here is accessibility. I can't recall the number of students who have come in and said, I traveled and I lost my passport. What do I do? It's important that you keep digital copies of your documents as well. Take pictures of your passport pages, your visa, Your I-20 should be digital, so you should always retain access to those through our iPortal. But any documents that you might receive, it's important to keep digital copies. And lastly, document self-check. Each and every time you enter the US, you need to make sure that you entered and that your documents were recorded correctly, and that your entry to the US was also recorded correctly by the port of entry officer. All of our immigration officers are human, so there are errors from time to time, but it is your responsibility to check your documents, make sure that they're correct, up to date, and then contact us if you have any questions or need to correct any details on them. Okay. So I hope you have your documents in front of you and are ready to jump in. Let's take a look at your first document, your passport. Okay. So if you go ahead and you turn to your biographical information page on your passport, you should make sure that all of this information is correct. Whenever we issue your Form I-20, we will refer to your passport. We will always follow the legal name as stated and shown in your passport. Okay, so make sure that this information is correct. What's important for you all to note regarding your passport is that you need to make sure that it is valid for at least 6 months into the future at all times. So you want to take a look at your passport page and note the date of expiration. That should be somewhere perhaps towards the bottom of the biographical information, but take a look at it. Every passport from each country looks a little different, but they all should have a date of expiration. I would suggest going into your personal calendars or your UCSD calendars, however you manage your reminders and your time, and put a reminder for about 7 to 8 months out before this expiration date, so you remember that you need to apply for a renewal of your passport. Okay. Passports can be renewed inside the US at your foreign consulate or embassy. And if you're traveling outside of the US, you can also renew it back home while you're abroad. All right. So passports, make sure it's valid for 6 months 6 months in the future at all times. Renew it if needed. You can renew it here or anywhere abroad. Okay. So inside of your passport, you can now turn to your visa page, your F-1 visa page. Something that many students don't quite understand about the visa, so it's important for us to clarify, is that your visa, you can think of it like a key. You only need a valid visa at the time you are entering the US, okay? Just like a key. If you're trying to come into the house, you need that key while you're outside of the US, outside of the house trying to get inside the house. However, once you're inside of the US or once you're inside your house, it's okay if you no longer have the key or if your valid visa expires. All right. As long as you're maintaining your status, we'll talk about what maintaining your status means in a moment here. You can stay in the US with a valid I-20, even if your F-1 visa has expired. Okay. So there are a couple things to note on your visa page. The first is the number of entries. So if you see an S for single, that means you can only use this visa during the validity of the visa page for a single time, one time. However, if the entry says M, that does mean multiple times during the validity of your visa. You can enter the US multiple times. All right. Make sure that your visa does show the right classification, F-1, and that the expiration date is valid, again, at the time you are entering the US. Okay. Now, your visa is a little bit different from your passport page. If your visa expires, it's okay for you to stay in the US. However, it cannot be renewed inside of the US. A visa can only be renewed and obtained outside of the US at a US embassy or consulate. All right. Okay, so now let's turn to the next document, your Form I-20. All of our attendees today should be F-1 students, so you should not have a Form DS 2019. You should have a Form I-20 for F-1 students. Some things to note on your I-20. It is your responsibility to keep it up to date. So make sure that you read through it and actually take a look at the information listed. Some things that are important for you to note is in the middle section, program of study, there should be a program start date and end date. I highly recommend you take mental note of this end date. This end date does fluctuate. We can extend it if you need more time. We can also shorten it if you finish earlier than anticipated. But it is your responsibility to make sure that this end date is up to date. If the end date lapses, then you are not eligible to extend it. You must apply for an extension prior to the current end date. So make a mental note of that end date and make sure that you inform ISPO if you need more or less time. Okay. Also, many of you might change your education level from undergrad to grad or master's to PhD. So any changes to your program level, maybe any changes to major or your biographical information, you change your legal name, all of those things do need to be submitted and reflected on your I-20 within 10 days of the change. All of the requests that you will submit to make changes will be done through the ISPO's iPortal. You're all familiar with that since you've requested your initial documents from us. And so do reference ISPO's website for some of these changes. If you're not sure, you can always come and talk to us and we'll let you know how to make those appropriate changes on your documents. Okay. All right, the next document that we will review is your electronic Form I-94. If you are inside of the US, you should have an electronic Form I-94. However, if you're still outside and you're planning to enter in the next couple of days here before the end of week 2, then perhaps you don't have your Form I-94 quite yet. Each and every time you enter the US, you do need to generate and you will receive a new record for your entry. So once you pass through the port of entry, a port of entry officer will record your electronic entrance. And you can access your electronic Form I-94, which is basically your arrival or departure record. It shows us when you last arrived, in what class, and how long you're allowed to stay here. Okay. It's important that you do check and generate your Form I-94 to make sure you were admitted in the right classification. So let's go over how you might do this. You would first visit i94.cbp.dhs.gov. I would say within 48 hours of your arrival, your electronic record should definitely be up to date. Now, once you go to this website, you will be prompted to retrieve your most recent I-94, in which case you would reference your passport information, your given name, your last name, date of birth, and then your passport number. Once you do enter that information, you will receive a prompt to print a PDF of this record. The PDF should show some important information you do need to review and make sure is up to date. The class of admission should say F-1. If it says something else, there's an error. You need to come and talk to us. We need to correct it. Also, the admit until date. This should always say D/S, which stands for duration of status. It means that you can stay in the US as long as you are following all the rules and regulations of your F-1 visa, which we'll go over briefly today. If there is a date listed here instead of the value D/S, that is also incorrect. Please come and talk to us. If ever this happens, we need to correct it. Okay. And then also make sure that your biographical information is correct and that they did enter your record for the right person. Okay. All right. The next form of reporting that you do need to conduct, however, it does not relate to a document, and also you don't see it necessarily in any of your immigration documents, is your address. So within 10 days of your arrival to the US or any address change, perhaps you move off campus and move in with a friend at an off-campus apartment. Within 10 days of that change, you need to log into Triton Link and update your address. Whenever you do that, Triton Link automatically pushes that information of your new address to your Form I-20. You cannot see it, but US Immigration can see it once you make that change. So it's important to make sure your current address here in the US is up to date. Also within Triton Link, you have the option to update your permanent address, the one that you maintain back home in your foreign country, and also in the event of an emergency. If something were to occur and we needed to contact somebody on your behalf, who would you like for us to designate as an emergency contact? You can update all of these contacts and addresses at tritonlink.ucsd.edu. So please make sure that you do that and take the time to do that within 10 days of any changes. Okay. All right. The last reporting requirement in terms of documentation that you need to be aware of is the check-in. In all of our new student communication, and also there should have been many reminders, you do need to submit another request in iPortal upon entry to the US. This is known as your check-in for I-20 or DS-2019 activation. Log into iPortal.ucsd.edu and submit this request. You will be required to upload your Form I-94 showing that you've last entered the US in F-1 status and that your US address is up to date within Triton Link. So make sure those two things are updated first before you submit your check-in. If you fail to submit your check-in, then we are unable to activate and maintain your Form I-20. So it's very, very important that everybody submits that check-in to indicate that, yes, I'm here, I'm on campus, I've arrived safely. Okay. All right, great. So now that you understand your documents a lot better, we're going to jump into the rules and the regulations that F-1 students need to be familiar with during their time here at UC San Diego. Before we go into each and every single one of those rules, I want to clarify for you what maintaining status might be. Now, you're going to hear this term quite often. You need to maintain your F-1 status, maintain your student status, your visa status, hold an active record. What does that mean? Also, the term of, you didn't do something you were supposed to do, and now you are out of status, or you're falling out of status. What do all of those terms mean? How does it relate to you and impact you and your visa status? So maintaining status essentially means that you are following all of the rules and regulations that we outlined today, and that you are keeping your documents up to date. Now, when ISPO first issues you a Form I-20, you hold an I-20 in what is called initial status. That means that you have not yet reported that you've arrived to the US and you have not yet started your program. All right. We're getting ready to welcome you and onboard you to your program here at UC San Diego. However, once you arrive to the US and you submit your check-in, ISPO will then activate your Form I-20. All right. And a very, very important part of your program, because we are waiting for you to submit that check-in so that you can move from initial to active status. Now, once you report that you're here and we've activated your status, you will maintain active status throughout your entire program if you follow all of the rules and reporting requirements. And you will you will maintain an active status all the way through the last date of enrollment in your classes, also signified by the program end date on your I-20. Okay. Now, if you don't follow the rules, then you will fall out of status. We will send you notification that you've fallen out of status for failure to maintain the regulations we've outlined. And then we will work with you if you do come across this type of situation. But again, it's not very common for many of our students. Many of our students do follow all of the rules and regulations we outline. Okay, now after you complete your program of study here at UC San Diego, you will enter into what's called your grace period. This grace period time is a time where your record is still active. However, you're done with your program and you are getting ready to figure out, what do I do next? Maybe I'm going to get ready to go back home. I might start a new program here in the US at a different school or here at UC San Diego, or maybe I want to stay here and I want to apply for work after graduation. You do have a period of time here in the US after you graduate and complete your program to figure out what to do next. Okay. Now, when you are maintaining your status, it means that you are maintaining an active status and taking actions within grace periods to maintain and continue a legal stay in the US. And so that's why there is actually no date on your Form I-94 designating when you can stay until. As long as you maintain an active I-20 and an active CVIS record, you're following all the rules and regulations, your program might be extended a year and you would still be permitted to stay here. So for the duration of your legal status in the US as an F-1 student, you are permitted to remain in the US. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's jump now into what some of these rules are. This is a list of the top 5 rules that students need to be mindful of during their stay here in the US. There are other rules and requirements that we do outline on our website, and we do our best to send students emails weekly regarding some things you might want to remember or review to see if it's pertinent and applicable to you and your status. But here are the 5 main ones you need to be aware of. The first one is enrolling full-time. The second is making sure your I-20 is up to date. The third is making sure that you are maintaining academic integrity. We'll talk about what that means. Number 4 is during your time in the US, knowing what rules might apply to you outside of our general campus, right? Federal regulations and rules. And then number 5 is some information about working in the US and where you might want to note a few things so that you do not fall out of status. Oops, get jumped a bit early. Okay, so we'll briefly review each of these 5, and hopefully by the end of this, you know the basics of maintaining your F-1 status. So the first is full-time enrollment. All international students during each required term, that is fall, winter, and spring, you are required to maintain a minimum of 12 units. All right. During the summer, we do consider summer a vacation term in which enrollment is optional. So you do not have to enroll in any units during the summer. If you choose to, you may, but you're not required to. Any student who takes less than 12 units must first apply for and receive approval for what is called a reduced course load. Now, there are reasons why you may be eligible to maintain your F-1 status with less than 12 units. However, you do need to receive approval first. There are only 3 reasons in which we would approve it. The first is an academic reason. Perhaps it's your first quarter at UC San Diego and you're having a difficult time acclimating to the quarter system, which is much faster than the semester system, and you'd like to reduce your units just to acclimate to this workload. That might be a reason we would approve it. Another reason is you break your ankle playing basketball during your free time and you can't walk to class. It's a little difficult for you. If you receive a doctor's note saying that they recommend to prioritize healing and your health, less units for that quarter, we might be able to also approve a reduced course load to take less than 12 units. And lastly, if it is your very final quarter and you only need 1 class left, we can also allow for less units during that term. So as you can see, we do approve less units during specific terms, but for very particular reasons. So if you are ever thinking about dropping below 12, you can always come and talk to us first to see if you are eligible. All right. The second, and probably one of the most common reasons students fall out of status is they forget to update the information on their I-20, all right? So you need to take a look at this program end date that I indicated here and make sure that you note when it is. If you need more time, you need to come and extend it. before this listed program end date. Other changes that you might need to report are if you're taking less than 12 units, or maybe you're not enrolling, you're taking a gap quarter. You don't tell us, you just leave, and you don't make any updates to your I-20, right? If you're applying to work and you don't tell us, you just start working off campus. You're changing majors and don't tell us. You get married, maybe change status, or you're withdrawing from your program here, or maybe transferring to a different program and you don't tell us. All of those things might result in problems or issues with your I-20 being up to date, because we don't know unless you inform us of those changes. So please do come and talk to us if you're unsure of how a specific change might impact your immigration documents. Okay. The third rule, and another common reason many students fall out of status, are for academic integrity conduct violations. So it's important that you understand academic integrity violations have a very serious impact on your immigration status. Those who are subject to these kinds of violations must leave campus, within 15 days. Very, very quick timeline. We take these very seriously. It doesn't give you much time to plan, and it can be a very stressful situation. So it's really important that you learn within your departments and within your classes what it means for you to excel with integrity. We would refer you to the Academic Integrity Office, aio.ucsc.edu. And they might suggest you also review your course syllabi, understand what is expected of you when you're collaborating with your classmates, doing group work, group homework, conducting research together. So understand what expectations are of you in terms of excelling with integrity in your classes. Many students who face a suspension due to academic integrity violations, dealing with cheating, and so forth, can face up to a year of suspension. And this can delay enrollment at UC San Diego, your inability to continue your program, and also maintain your visa status in the US. So again, a huge topic, not something I want to spend too much time on, but please do be aware that this is a huge issue and problem that can impact you if you don't understand what the academic expectations of excelling with integrity might be within your courses. Okay. Okay, number 4. We're flying through these, aren't we? So here in the US, the rules may differ from state to state. Now, rules in the US may be different from your home country. What you might be used to back home might be different from what actually is in place here in the US. Now, there are state laws which apply to all 50 states individually, right? Each state might have their own laws. And then there are federal laws. Federal laws, they apply to all 50 states. Doesn't matter what state you're located in. If it's a federal law, it will apply to all 50 states. A state law only applies to the particular state that you are in. Now, I do want to point out and clarify that as an international student, it does not matter what state you are located in. You will always be subject to federal law. Okay, a big example is, let's take medicinal marijuana as an example. Now, although the purchase and option to partake in recreational use of marijuana is legal in the state of California, it is not legal in all 50 states, which means it is a state law, not a federal law. Because international students are subject to federal laws, if you are in California and you do choose to partake in those kinds of activities, do understand that if you come in contact with law enforcement, they will consider the rules under federal law when determining if you are in any kind of trouble. So please do be mindful of these kinds of regulations that might impact you. Okay. And the last rule that I'd like to point out today is in regards to in regards to work authorization, working in the US. There are, under your F-1 status, many benefits to working in the US and getting some experience during your program and also after your program. However, before you start any kind of work, you first need to understand what kind of documentation you need to have in your hand, what kind of authorization you might need, and who to get it from before you start any kind of work. As a rule of thumb, do not start any kind of employment until you have the authorization to do so. Visit iwork.ucsd.edu and we will outline for you all the different kinds of employment you might be eligible for during your time here, and also the type of authorization you might need for each kind. All right. Okay, so now that you know the basic 5 rules of your immigration status, we're going to go quickly into some travel and emergency contact information, ways to connect, and then we can close the session or open it up for any questions you might have today. All right, we have a great website, itravel.ucsd.edu. Really easy to remember. But as many of you are preparing to travel or will travel eventually, referencing this website is important so that you can learn about what documents you might need to enter the US. Now, you can always leave. That's no problem. But what's important to note is that you need to present documents each time you enter. So before you plan to depart the US, make sure that you understand what documents you need to re-enter the US. Okay. And also, for those of you who are planning to explore California's amazing locations in the next few weeks, despite the weather in the state right now, you should also learn about what documents you might want to carry when you're traveling domestically within the US. That's also outlined on this website. Right. On the second page of your I-20, you will need to make sure that you have a valid travel signature. You can learn more about how to get a new travel signature if you need a new one by visiting itravel.ucsd.edu. As you prepare to travel, something to keep handy either on your phone or you can print it out on your wallet, is our international student and also scholar emergency contact. This has a list of emergency contacts, including general safety information while you're on campus, such as UCPD, police, and so forth. If you're ever detained or arrested by law enforcement, we also have some tips here on what to do, what to say, and access to some certain rights that you might have. So a great document to keep on your phone as a photo or print out and keep in your wallet. This is also accessible on our itravel.ucsd.edu website. Okay. Now to the fun part of events. We do have 2 events, I believe, coffee hours, which is happening on the 18th, and intercultural social hour, which I forget the exact date this is occurring, might be today, but oops, I'm sorry. Let's see, where did we just go? Here we are. All right. So ways to connect. We have coffee hours in our intercultural social hour, but these are great ways to connect with other international students in person and virtually and meet other Tritons on campus. We also have our calendar of events. So ievents.ucsd.edu, and it shows, coming up for the rest of the quarter, what other events might be on deck for you to network and meet other students. We also have our iprograms.ucsd. I apologize for that typo here. And there are a number of programs that you can engage in during your time here at UCSD to meet other students and connect and excel. At the end of the session, you should get a survey. Please let me know how this presentation went today and if there's anything I can improve for our future attendees. And also, if you were able to take away good information, useful information from our session today. And some final reminders. I do hope that you learned a lot from our session. If you have any questions, you can always visit our website at istudents.ucsd.edu. And oops, some final reminders here. Do log into the iPortal and complete your document self-check. All right. And make sure that you're checking your email for newsletters that you might receive regarding how reminders for updating your status or things that are coming up that you might need to be mindful of. If you have any questions and want to connect with our advisors here, visit icontact.ucsd.edu. Please connect and follow us on social media. And if you have any questions about safety campus operations during the ongoing pandemic, you can always visit returntolearn.ucsd.edu. All right. Okay, I do not see any questions from the group here. So at this time, I would like to thank you all for attending and spending your afternoon with me. If you have any questions, please do visit our website or connect with our advisors at icontact.ucsd.edu. Wishing you a great quarter ahead. And again, welcome to UC San Diego. Take care and bye-bye for now.